All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to MythBusters. So MythBusters is a Q&A session where you get to ask fellow upper years and fellow students some questions to debunk kind of myths or ask questions about your first year experience as well as your university and student life experience. So we're going to start the Q&A session in a quick little minute. So please double check the link in the chat for the sign-in sheet. And we're going to take just one more quick minute. You can feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, including your name, program, what you're most interested in hearing about from our panelists. And we're going to get started in one quick second. Is the sign-in sheet for PLs as well?
No, PLs won't have to check in.
Sounds good. So as people are filling in the attendance sheet, I guess we'll just get going. All right. So just some technical housekeeping. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, try logging off and back in. In the event of a Zoom bombing, we will close this session immediately to protect all our participants, and a follow-up email will be sent out. All right. So now we will introduce our lovely panelists. If our panelists can give a quick wave as I introduce them, that would be super great. So Alan, he is one of our panelists. He is starting his third year doing nutritional sciences and a health and disease major. So he's super well-versed in the sciences, and he is one of our head peer leaders this year. So you may see him around at a couple of the events. So our second panelist is Mystica, starting her fourth year with a health and disease specialist. Also, we love a life science queen. She's also one of our head peer leaders as well as a member on some student life clubs. So you can ask her questions about student life and so on. We have Lucy going into her third year. She is studying political science and equity studies. So we love a humanities, social science major. And she is the new College Student Council president. And I know a lot of you have questions about NCSC and the council, so all those questions can definitely be directed towards her. And last but not least, we have Natasha going into her fourth year, studying ecology, environmental biology specialist with a genome biology major. Wow, that is a mouthful, Natasha. She is one of our lovely, lovely senior peer leaders for this year, so she can answer all questions, student life, as well as academic questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to get started with the Q&A session. So I'm going to stop sharing over here. So if everyone looks at the bottom of their screen, there's a little Q&A button. You can select that button and start sending in questions. As well, when you send in these questions, they can also be upvoted, which means there'll be a little thumbs up next to these buttons. And if you see a question that you really want answered, feel free to press the like button, and then that'll move the question up so more students, so we get to those questions sooner. So feel free to start submitting your questions, and we will take a quick second just to get everyone's questions in, and then we'll get started with the actual answering of the questions. All right. We're getting questions. Give it one more quick second and then we can start answering questions. Awesome. Oh, I love these questions. All right, so we're gonna get started with answering a couple of the more popular ones and we'll start going through it. So our first question here is, what are you most excited about for New One Time? What should I make sure I do not miss? So maybe one of our head pillars can take this question. If Mystica, did you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So I think for me, one of the things that I would never like to miss out on would be group time. So I know you guys, a lot of them are assigned to different leaders, head peer leaders, and you have your own group. So I would 100% recommend not missing out on group time. You do a lot of fun icebreakers, as well as you get to meet new students in a small community. So you can always make great new friends online, even though you're not in person.
Awesome, great, love that answer. All right, so the next question we have here is, do you guys have any piece of advice on how to manage your social life with your academic life? Natasha, did you want to take this one?
So I struggled a lot with this my first year because I didn't know what the word balance meant when between academics and social life and trying to manage all the things I had to do. And it was a process for me to start figuring out my priorities, what was the minimum that I needed to keep my academics going, while still maintaining a healthy balance with my social life and any extracurriculars that I had as well. And so there's a lot of tips and tricks that you can use. There's not going to be one universal answer for everyone, but to give a general answer, I'd say it's to start learning about your own personal needs. What do you need for academics? What do you need in other parts of your life as well? And then working towards maintaining those needs throughout the school year. And it's really easy to just say that, but there are a lot of different resources that you can use throughout the year to help you along that path. SPLs are one of them, as well as a lot of other new college resources as well.
All right, thank you so much. That's a great answer. So our next question here is, what is the workload like in first year? So Alan, did you want to take that one?
Okay, yeah, so to answer what the workload is like in first year, honestly, it depends. Sometimes, usually most of the time, you are taking a lot of prerequisite courses so that you can fulfill them before second year. That's when you start applying to your programs. That's the case, at least for me in life sciences. I can't speak to how it works in other faculties. But it will depend, I guess, a lot on how the courses run and also what type of course. One of the courses that I took in first year was it was like a seminar type of course. So there was fewer participants or fewer people in the class, and again, the workload varied because it was more interactive. So I think to best handle this is to when you start classes, to get in touch with the prof, attend office hours, and to get a general sense of what to expect, and also review the syllabus, because it will depend heavily on what type of courses and what kind of program you're in going its first year.
All right, thank you, Alan. So next question here is directed at the lovely NCSC president, at Lucy. You were added specifically. It disappeared. How was the journey to becoming the NCSC president? A lovely question.
Thank you for the question. So basically, I got involved in NCSC in first year. I got involved as a first year rep, and it was actually because one of my orientation leaders was involved in NCSC at the time and very much promoted it to us and told us more about it. And so I was very interested in it. And having done student government in high school, it was still something that I was still interested in. And so I got involved in first year. Every fall, 2 first year rep positions go up. And so that's what I ran for. And I held that position throughout first year. And then at the end of first year, I actually ran for one of the exec positions. And last year, I held the position of vice president student life. And then at the end of last year, I ran for president. And so that's kind of the path that I took. But there are a lot of different paths that you can take, because there's not just first year rep positions that are open to first years. We have a lot of commissioner positions, as well as off-campus rep positions that are open to first years as well. And so it's not, definitely my way is not the only way to get involved in NCSC, but this was my path.
All right. We love a little journey, origin story. Thank you, Lucy. All right, so the next question we have here, this is kind of a general one, but I feel like it should be answered anyway. Is it hard to get a good GPA at U of T? Why or why not? So I think we should ask one of our older students, one of those. So if Mystica, you wanted to take that one.
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily like to say what is a good GPA, because I think a GPA really just tells you what marks you got in university. It doesn't tell you how you're intelligently or academically succeeding. So a good GPA is pretty vague. I think a lot of people assume a good GPA is a 4.0, but honestly, if you're looking into higher education, sometimes your GPA doesn't even matter, or if you're looking into professional life. So there is no way to say there's a good GPA. I know U of T does have the reputation that it's hard and the classes are tough and you're gonna fail, but I don't think you should ever look at it that way. I think if you put in your most effort, you try your best, you ask questions, I think you'll succeed in the best way that you possibly can. I know that's a non-answer, but I think that would help you out.
All right, thank you so much, Mystica. Oops. Yes, okay, so our next question here is, some of us are staying at home. What is the best way to meet new people before we arrive on campus in the future? So Natasha, did you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, attending orientation is a really good first step for that. There's a lot of social events happening these next 2 weeks, and to make the most of that, you will definitely make a lot of new friends. I actually met Mystica my first year of orientation, and we've been friends since then. So the friends that you make in orientation don't need to last just through orientation. Additionally, when the school year starts, there's going to be a lot of different extracurricular options for you, such as student clubs, student groups, things in New College, things outside of New College. So if you have any interest in anything, any hobbies that you want to do, anything you want to try out, there is something for you here at U of T. And if I can just personally say, New College student groups are really amazing. Things within orientation, mentorship groups, stuff like that. But also, if New College isn't your thing, you don't need to stick with us. You can go to other U of T groups as well.
All right, thank you, Natasha. Just an add-on to that, there are a couple of questions about getting involved on campus. So if Natasha, you wanted to speak to a little bit about a specific question we have here is there a place I can learn about clubs and organizations at U of T?
So there's going to be a clubs fair happening in September. I don't have all the information, perhaps one of the other panelists does, but I believe the orientation team will be sending out information later on. Additionally, there is a website listing all U of T student clubs. Don't know it off the top of my head, but if you just Google U of T student clubs, it should come up. And there's more than 1,000 student groups, student clubs specifically at U of T. So it's a really great website because you can just look up whatever hobbies, whatever interests you have, and it can pull up a lot of different options for you.
All right, thank you, Natasha. So our next question here is, what is the difference between the classes at U of T and the classes from high school? Alan, did you want to take that one away?
So the question was, what's the difference between classes in high school and classes in university?
Yes.
So the big thing The big difference is that the classes in university are a lot larger. You're not going to be in that little tight 30, 24 person type class that you're accustomed to, that I'm assuming was what you experienced in high school. It's not the end of the world. There's nothing that should stop you from having a great, wonderful experience at university. You can definitely still meet new people, and you can still approach the prof during office hours. Yeah, you're just going to be with a lot more people. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alan. So next question is, what is it like living on residence at NEW? Let's go to someone who has lived on residence at NEW, Lucy.
Another really good question. So living on residence, it's a super unique experience. I would especially say living on residence at New College is a very different experience from living at on residence at different colleges on campus. But it's super unique in that you get this community that you're kind of already set up with for the year. And obviously there's going to be a lot of different types of people, but there's usually someone who you'll connect with really well on your floor or just in your building in general. And it's really nice to have that kind of community when you, as soon as you get to university. And also the way that New College residence is set up, there's like regular meetings, regular kind of almost similar to group times that we have during orientation, but there's regular meetings where you get to meet all the different kinds of people. There's also residence council, which I saw mentioned in the chat, residence council, which is kind of a really good first step into student governance. And basically there's just a lot of support that you receive being on residence, as well as a lot of different people that you're kind of already in close proximity with while you're on residence. And I would say that it's the relationships that you make while you're on res are super unique, and oftentimes you'll find them to be different than the ones that you make like in your classes and in student groups.
All right, thank you, Lucy. So our next question here is, how hard is it to apply for programs after first year? So Mystica, if you wanted to take that one away.
So I think it depends on every single different program. For example, life sciences does have a wide array of different programs, double major, specialist combinations that you can take. A lot of them are either type 1 or application based, which is type 2 or type 3. So I know you're going to be learning more about those in future events, talking about the different types of programs. So I won't expand on that now. I do know that there is some competition for some other programs, but if you try your best in first year to get the grades that you need, usually all the requirements are listed online on the academic calendar, you will most likely get in. And there's so many different options, so don't be discouraged if you don't get into your first program option. There's always so many different ways to learn and take the classes that you're interested in.
All right, thank you. So our next question is, how/when do I sign up for extracurriculars during quarantine? Natasha?
So this depends on the extracurriculars. Some of them accept on a rolling basis, like some of the clubs that I've joined will accept students whenever. But I've been in some musical groups as well, where you need to audition at the beginning of the year. So then there is a deadline when you can join the club. Depends on which one you want to do. Usually all of them will list all the requirements. If you go to the website, I think Todd linked the website in the chat, ulife.com, .utoronto. And then if you go to the club, they'll usually have a club website as well, or a Facebook group, and then it'll tell you deadlines for joining, when you can join, things like that. And it also varies for new college programs as well. So if you have an extracurricular you're interested in, I would make sure that you meet all the requirements before joining.
All right, thank you. Should we wait until the first week of classes to order textbooks? Alan?
Okay, so when it comes to textbooks, there's a lot of factors that go into ordering. Because I know that the sometimes, oh man, this is interesting. Okay, so sometimes you can order them from different places other than the University of Toronto bookstore. And then sometimes the class starts right away with using something from the textbook. Like, for example, if one of the first assignments has to be like a question bank from this textbook. So because there are a lot of different factors to consider, I think if it's possible to look at the syllabus or contact anyone from the class that you're taking or the course you're taking in order to gauge whether or not they'll be starting from the textbook right away. Obviously, this is a new online format, so things might be different from the past. And that way, at least you don't, spend more than you have to on a particular textbook. So I'd say that because it is a new online format, try and reach out to a course or department head in order to gauge what the class will look like come September 10th.
All right, thank you, Alan. And if you also, there's another question also pertaining to textbooks if you wanted to answer that one as well. What are your suggestions for getting access to textbooks if you don't plan on living in the GTA this year?
All right, so if you don't plan on living in the GTA and for getting textbooks, I guess the only solution here, or one of the solutions would be to get online copies of textbooks. A lot of textbooks do come as like a digital format. So whether that be through through Amazon, and there's other providers of textbooks that I'm sort of blanking on right now. That's sort of the best way I can think of, because you said outside of the GTA, if it comes to shipping, that might complicate things if you're in an area that might make it hard for textbooks to come there and be shipped there. So try and look into online digital versions for textbooks in that sense.
Perfect, thank you. So our next question here, oh my goodness, okay, is, are you able to completely change the path you're on in terms of majors, programs, etc.? I'm in life sci, but I'm not 100% sure if I want to stick with it. I have some really aggressive nods from a couple of people here, so if either of you want to take it away, go ahead.
Maybe I can take that. I think I've switched my majors and specialists 4 times thus far. Admittedly, the programs that I have switched between have been pretty similar, but I've switched a major to a specialist, I've completely switched a major, I added a minor, I dropped a minor, added a different minor, switched my programs around a little bit more throughout my years. It hasn't added any time to my graduation because a lot of the prerequisites have been similar since they are pretty similar programs. But in general, one of the great things about U of T is that it's incredibly flexible with your programs. You can add them, drop them, switch them later on in your years. And there is very little requirements for doing that within the Faculty of Arts and Science, provided that you meet all the prerequisites for those programs. So it is pretty easy to switch around. Even if you don't get into your top program your first year, you can try in your second year or your third year or your fourth year. It all depends on how long you want to take to graduate and if you meet those requirements to get into the program at the beginning.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question here is an NCSC related question. How do I apply to NCSC?
That's a really good question also. So basically there's a couple of ways to get involved in NCSC. All of the positions that I've held, I ran for and was elected into. And so essentially we have elected members, so we have representatives and we have commissioners that are elected by the student body. The student body being new college students. And then we also have hired positions, which we've been hiring for all this summer. We had 8 hired positions this summer, and so they include people like social media managers and photographers and web designers who kind of help us with the nitty-gritty details involved with NCSC. And then we also have some volunteer positions that all of them are unpaid. So they're technically all volunteer positions except for the hired ones. But we have kind of less commitment positions under the commissions. So especially the social commission, you'll find that there are deputy commissioners as well as other positions that they put up during the year where you can kind of get involved with the social commission, get involved with planning bigger events, but you don't necessarily have to commit as much time as you would in an elected position. And so all of the ways of getting involved will be advertised this year on our website, which is ncsc.ca, as well as on our social media. You can find us on Instagram at MyNCSC, as well as on Facebook, facebook.com/MyNCSC.
Awesome. Thank you, Lucy. So another question we have here is it hard to make friends in your first year since U of T is quite big in general? Mystica?
So I wouldn't necessarily say it's hard. It really, for me, the friends that I made were in classes and people around me, as well as within the new college community. So in first year, I wasn't exceedingly involved in social clubs, but I do think in my second year I was. So I was part of an NCSC commission. So that's where I got to meet a lot of different people, as well as in my third year when I joined NCSC. So I'm also a former NCSC member. So you get to meet so many people that way. There's also a lot of clubs that are doing online memberships. You can go ahead and join, and there's huge community events and general memberships and meetings where you can go out. There's also a lot of clubs out there that have small get-togethers. For example, I've heard of the video games club or the board games club that we have at New College called Get Lit Gaming. So you can always search up their website and their Facebook page, see when they're having meetings, and you can always go online and have fun games with them. So those are great ways to get to know people.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Mystica. Next question. How do asynchronous classes work? Do you ever actually meet, or is it solely independent? So maybe someone who has taken asynchronous classes can speak to that, if any of you have.
I can go ahead and answer that. So I did have an asynchronous class over the summer for summer school. And basically how it works is videos are posted online, and you watch those videos, and usually you have your quizzes, assignments, and you submit those. For my specific class, we did have tutorials, and I think you've seen tutorials on your schedule if you do have a couple. And those are usually synchronous, where we would meet with the professor and answer questions live. But if your class doesn't have any meeting times, usually there may be one or two group components, because they do want to increase interaction, and working together is also a big component to education. So there would be one or two group projects where you might meet with your fellow classmates to complete assignments. So those are how a couple of the asynchronous classes I've done worked. And I do know that professors have office hours where a bunch of students go in online on either a Zoom call or a Microsoft Teams meeting. So there's lots of students there, so you can always meet and ask questions in that kind of setting.
Awesome, thank you. Next question. I've read on Sydney Smith Comments that one should study 2 to 3 hours outside of class for each hour of lecture. To what extent do you agree with this rule, and do you believe this is a good guideline to go by? So if anyone in particular wanted to take that one, or I can hand it off to someone.
I could take it.
All right, thank you, Alan.
All right, so I do remember listening or hearing that piece of advice as well when I was coming into first year at U of T. I do agree, well, to a certain extent. Yes, you do need to take some time outside of the class to review the material, absorb it, understand it. You can basically sum it up as repetition is the mother of all skill, especially in life science classes. You would need to have that sort of base level understanding to be able to handle all the assignments or questions that they throw your way. However, sometimes, you know, if there's a class that you really are clicking, sometimes it depends on the professor that teaches it as well. You wouldn't need, in that case, the full 2 to 3 hours. First year is very much a time to experiment. I've experimented a lot in first and in second year to see like how well do you work, what times, like at what times of the day are you best at working, when are you most alert. When you can answer these questions for yourself and you can improve or refine your study habits after you do the experiment, you take what works, you throw out what doesn't. And after these sorts of processes, you can really, shave down maybe the amount of time that you can study. But again, I encourage you all to experiment and again, see what works for you.
Awesome, thank you. So next question we have here is, what are your opinions on recognized study groups? How many do you recommend one should do because there's a significant time commitment? However, I understand finding people to study with is a lot harder online, so how would that challenge the calculation? So there's a lot to this question. So if anyone can speak to recognized study groups in general, I think that would be the best way to approach this question. If anyone wants to take over that, Natasha, go ahead.
Recognized study groups are really cool because if you participate them to a certain extent, you actually get credit on your co-curricular record, which is like an accompaniment to your transcript. It gives you a list of all the various extracurriculars that you've attended at U of T that have been U of T approved. So that's a really great way to add to your co-curricular record. I've participated in a few of them. Personally, for me, I find it a little bit difficult to study in a group, but for those who did find it useful to study in a group, it was extremely successful. The recognized study groups are cool because they usually have like set time scales, like when you're studying, when's your break time, and there's other people to hold you accountable. And then some of them are also subject specific. So you can have people in your study group who are in the same classes as you, and they can help you if you have any problems. It all depends on how you study best, when you study best. If it works for you, that's great. If you think it might work for you, try it out. And if it doesn't, you can always drop after 1 or 2 sessions. So completely up to you.
All right, thank you. Any tips for how to stay motivated and work well with online learning? So maybe Lucy, if you wanted to take over that one.
Sure. I mean, obviously, not most of us haven't gotten too much of a chance to do a lot of online learning yet. But I did take some summer courses this summer, and so with the experience that I developed over the summer, I would say that with online learning, it's really important to get in touch with like your own abilities and your own comforts. And with online learning, it's also easier to do that, I would say, than with in-person learning. With in-person learning, it's easy to get caught up with other people's study habits, but with online learning, it's a little bit easier to focus on yourself. And I would say that it is really important to focus on yourself and to kind of touch base with, like, I would say, like, once you're like a week or so into lectures, check in with yourself and see what's working and what isn't. Like personally for me, I learned that with online learning, taking notes with hand, like with pen and paper wasn't working for me, even though it was something that worked for me before in in-person lectures. And so I switched to digital note-taking, and it's worked a lot better for me. I still do some things by hand, but for online learning, taking my notes on my laptop is just a lot easier for me to digest. And so I would definitely say to just check in with yourself. And then also, don't be afraid to reach out to professors and to TAs or to other students, even when you're online learning. I know that it's a little bit more intimidating to do that because you don't see people in person and you kind of have to take the first step to do it. But people are still really willing to connect. Especially, I would say a lot of professors are kind of missing the student connection now that learning is online. And so if you reach out, a lot of professors are very willing to lend a hand or just have a chat if you're willing to reach out.
Awesome, thank you. So another question, this is a fun question. How cold does it get in Toronto during the winter? Any tips for international students? Maybe someone who's endured the cold of Canada can answer.
I'm from California, from just outside San Francisco. So it gets below freezing in San Francisco area, maybe like twice a year. And so coming to Toronto my first year was the first time I experienced actual seasons. So that was definitely a big transition for me. But if you got the right gear, you got your jacket, waterproof shoes, the winter I find is pretty manageable. I got a lot of advice my first year from upper year students, friends who were from the area about how to survive the winter, why I should definitely not be wearing Converse in the snow. But then once you get used to it, after that adjustment curve, I actually kind of like the snow and the cold. So once you got used to it, it was pretty good. As long as you stay aware, stay safe in the cold, check the weather, you should be okay.
Awesome. Thank you. So another question is, how stressful is exam season? Any tips to get through university level exams? Mystica, if you wanted to take that one.
So I'm pretty sure most of you have gone through also high school exams, and I think it would be pretty similar. It is stressful in the fact that you are learning a whole semester's, or maybe if it's a year-long course, a whole year's worth of material. But do know that your professors are there to help. There's a lot of study resources, and usually teachers put out exam reviews. So it is similar to, I would say, a high school exam session. It is stressful, and everybody understands that. Usually exam season, New College does have a lot of stress relieving activities, and like they usually have events. Hopefully they will be online this year. We're still seeing how that will go, but there are so many resources. If you do get stressed beyond a point, there's so many different mental health and counseling resources we have on campus. You could always check out online. So it is stressful, but have a strong support group, check out your resources, and I'm pretty sure you'll get through it smoothly.
Awesome, thank you. So another question we actually have a couple of questions pertaining to work-study positions, finding a job on campus, and research positions. So if any of you have done any of these, maybe you can speak a little to the process. What is a work-study and how to get research positions? I'm not sure if any of you.
I can answer research positions.
Go ahead.
I've been involved in research in some way, shape, or form since my first year. My first year, I was a volunteer in a lab, a biology lab, and I basically counted flowers for 3 hours a week for a whole year. And then after that, my second year, I was part of the Research Opportunity Program, which is an arts and science specific program. So not just for life science, it's in other humanities programs as well. And then my third year and now my fourth year, I've been doing independent research projects, also in life science labs. So there's a lot of different options for engaging in research. If you want to volunteer, if you want a higher level of commitment, if you want to do your own project. There's also options through work study to do research as well. So it all depends on what you want to do, where you want to go perhaps out after your undergraduate time at U of T, and also availability. So like keep your eyes open for any positions available in any labs that you're interested in. Send out emails if you want. Just keep in mind that U of T is a research facility, and so there will be options available for you if that is what you're interested in.
Awesome, thank you. So another question we have here is, what year is a good year to apply for the work-study program? I'm not sure if any of you have done work studies. If not, it's fine. We can direct them somewhere else.
I could talk about just like work and studying in general, because I have held a job along with my studies in second year. So it wasn't part of work study though, but it was still like a job, like I got hired and everything. So in terms of when it would be a good time, in my experience, what I did is that I kind of spent my first year just doing all sorts of experimenting, testing out how I would study. Do I like the classes, the clubs and other kinds of organizations I would join? If I didn't like them, I'd leave, and just keep repeating that process the whole year. And then by then, I sort of had like a baseline that's like, okay, this is how I operate at the university level. And then that's when I started looking for paid positions, either through work study or, you know, outside of like external jobs, whatever that you can find. It is, again, up to how you operate again and how you experiment. So if you only need like a few months to get used to university or maybe half a semester, then by all means, there is no right or wrong time to apply for one of these positions. I would just say maybe try and get a little taste of how university is like, especially during these really weird times where everything's online, before you commit to something, so that, you know, you're doing something that you truly want to do.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question is, can you please explain how the credit, no credit system works? So Mystica, if you wanted to explain it.
Yes, I can go ahead. So credit, no credit is basically there for usually either breadth courses or non-program requirements where you're interested in the course, yet you're not sure whether or not you'll get a grade that may or may not affect your GPA. So usually that's there to give you the credit and show that you've completed the class, yet if you fail it, the failing grade won't be on your transcript. Or if you do pass, but pass with a low mark, it will just say you got the credit, or NCO, which means you didn't get the credit if you did not pass that class. Usually these are used for either breadth requirements or non-program requirements. I know you're not allowed to credit, no credit program requirements, because then they won't be accepted as a program, four-year program. But yes, I'm not sure if I'm missing anything and anybody wants to chime in for that, but yes.
Talk to your registrar if you're ever confused about credit, no credit. If you're considering it, but you're not quite sure, if you want to know the repercussions of credit, no crediting a class, the registrar is a great place to go.
All right, so we did have a couple of questions about waitlist. So what do you do if you're still on a waitlist for some courses? Has anyone been on a waitlist here?
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so I can speak to that. So I just searched it up. The waitlist deadline does close by September 18th. So you do have the availability to be on the waitlist until September 18th. Usually a lot of the time what happens, and I would say this happens a lot for first year as well, is that people join the course, they realize they don't like it, and they drop the course, and you slowly move up the waitlist. I think, I'm not sure if this is 100% true, but usually what the give and take is if you're within the top 10% of the waitlist, you most likely will get in. If you really want to take the course, you could always email the department, or you can message your registrar to see if there's anything you can do to get in. If it is a prerequisites, there's a lot of ways to get around waitlist. So I think the best thing to do, if you're not already in the class by the waitlist deadline, you can always message the department heads or your registrar.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question here is, how can I find a community at U of T and New College as a commuter student? I know a few of you are commuter students here, so.
Okay, I'll take this one then.
All right, Alan, go ahead.
So in my first and second years, I did commute all the way to campus. I commuted from Victoria Park, so it was kind of a little bit of a commute. In order to find a community, here, I'll start with New College. New College has some wonderful dons. I think they've done a little bit of some renaming, but they were commuter dons. I think now there's a different name, but they are wonderful in allowing commuters to feel welcome, especially here at New College, with a variety of different events that they host throughout the year. You get to interact with many other students. You get to interact with these student leaders as well. That's where I would start. That's definitely where I went as a commuter student. And then from there, I can talk to also, like, because it's kind of weird this year with everything online, it's even more important now to check out these different events that these student leaders are going to be hosting now. And yeah, if anyone else wants to like jump in, I know Natasha, you'd be great to talk about this as well.
Yeah, so formerly known as Commuter Dons, now known as Senior Peer Leaders. There are 3 of us this year. I'm one of them. The 2 other Senior Peer Leaders are Sanjana and Sabrina. You'll perhaps see them around at some events. And we have an event coming up September 9th. It's a Sprout Kickoff event for the Sprout Mentorship Program, but we'll also be targeting to commuter students as well. We're one of your designated resources to talk to if you have any problems with commuting, if you want some tips and tricks. And just like to mention that for this year, commuter students also involves those who are telecommuting. So everyone who is online or coming to in-person classes, you are considered commuter students. If you're not living on residence, you are a commuter student. And we're one of the people you can talk to if you have any problems about that. And throughout the school year, we're going to be planning specific events for commuter students, targeting different problems that commuter students have, different resources that commuter students might find useful, and various socials too. So you can meet other commuter students who might be in similar situations as you are.
Awesome, thank you. All right, another question is, what will FLCs be like? I'm not sure if any of you have done FLCs or been a part of a first learning community. I think that's what they're called. So if any of you have, please feel free to take over.
I have if no one else has. So my first year I lived in residence and I was part of a life science first year learning community, or FLIC, FLC. What an FLC is, it's a group of about 15 students, if I got that number right, plus or minus a few. And of all those students, you are all in the same program. You have the same class schedule for your core classes, and you meet bi-weekly, so every other week, with the other students as well as a staff member, and usually there are resource presentations as well. So for me, it was a wonderful experience. I really loved my leaders in the FLC and the other people in my FLC. I'm still friends with some of them. It was helpful to have an FLC because I had 15 people who were in all of my core life science classes, and we often got help from each other for any problems we're having with academics. And also, when we had our FLC meetings, we had a lot of, the resources that were presented were really helpful as well, and they were targeted to whatever time of the year it was. So when it was time to pick out our programs, there was someone from the registrar's office to talk us through all of that. So it's a really great opportunity if any of you are in FLCs. Strongly recommend you participate in your meetings. Yeah, it's a really cool program.
Awesome, thank you. So another question we have here is, once you enroll for fall and winter, are you able to make changes to it before the second term? So if Lucy, did you want to take that one?
Sure. I don't have the dates in front of me, and I'm really bad at dates, so I couldn't even give you an approximate really, but you can make changes before the winter semester. I would, again, the registrar's office is a really good resource for that, as well as the Success Commons website, as well as the timetable website. They all have dates for kind of your drop dates, as well as your like CR and CR dates. Any changes that you want to make to the winter session, there are specific dates for each of them, and so changes can be made. You can add courses, you can drop courses without penalty for the winter session up until, I'm not even going to try and get an approximate date. I don't want to mislead anyone.
All right,
Yeah, so
thank
I'm gonna, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm
Do
gonna
your
jump
thing.
in because I just searched up the dates for all of you. So September 23rd is the last day to enroll in fall and year-long courses. And January, hold on one second. And January 17th, 2021 is the last day to enroll in winter courses. So you guys have a lot of time left to change your courses. If not, you also want to change it after those dates, always contact your registrar.
Awesome, thank you. So another question we have here is it important to get most of your breath requirements done in first year? Anyone can take that one.
I'll go ahead. So I would say it's not necessary. It is helpful to finish them in first year because breath requirements are usually elective courses, and most of the times people want to finish up their most specialist courses in upper years. So breath requirements usually have different departments and different categories than your program. I do recommend getting them done in first year. I personally actually finished my last breath requirement this summer. So it actually, for me, I spaced them out evenly because I found they gave me a little break in between my science courses. A lot of my courses were health and disease and science based. So I kind of spaced my breath requirements evenly throughout my year. So I will always have a different course in a different program or a different category to take my mind off all the science.
Fair enough. Awesome. Thank you, Mystica. So our next question is, what's your favorite and least favorite thing about living in dorms? Maybe someone who's lived in dorms can take this. I'm looking at you, Lucy.
Yeah, sure. I can address this. I would say that let's start with the negatives and end on a positive. So my least favorite thing about living in dorms, I would say, is it was hard to get away sometimes. In any environment that you're in, it's good to have time away. And when you're living in res, it can be really hard to get away because you're living and you're learning, you're working all in the same space. And so I would definitely say look for people that you can go to who don't live on residence. Look for places that you can go to study that aren't on residence, so that you have a space that you can get away to when you need a little bit of a break from the environment. But I would say that my favorite thing about living in residence was, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's being so close to the community. I really liked the proximity to New College that I had. And especially in serving in student council positions, it was also super convenient and super helpful for me to be that close. And so, yeah, it's a double-edged sword, but both my favorite and least favorite things about living on residence involved being so close to the community.
Awesome. Thank you. So another question we have is, do you have any advice for choosing a program when you're not sure what to go into?
Maybe I can take that one.
Go for it, Natasha.
So my first year, I knew I wanted to study biology, but I didn't know what specifically I wanted to study. Mentioned earlier that I've done a lot of switching around, and that is because I was trying out different things and realizing, hey, this is not for me, and I like this part of this program, but there's a whole program over here that's dedicated solely to that, so maybe I should switch over there. So one of the great things about U of T is that your first year is undecided within your programs, so you have that whole first year to kind of figure out what you're interested in. Your prereqs are kind of scheduled so that you get a little bit of a taste of different areas within your program, and that's really helpful in deciding your programs at the end of your first year. So you have time. You don't need to have it all figured out at the beginning, and even if you don't have it figured out at the end of your first year when you're applying to programs, you can always figure it out later like I did.
Awesome. We love that. We love figuring out our degree. All right. So another question we have here is, how do we claim credit for AP and IB? So I'm assuming transfer credits. So if anyone can speak to transfer credits, Lucy, go right for it.
Yeah. So I went to high school in the United States, and I took about 11 AP credits in high school. And so coming into U of T, I was really looking to get those transferred. And so I will drop a link to a website that you can go to based on kind of your faculty or what you're studying or kind of what your situation is. And it'll lead you to a link that can tell you more about transfer credits. But essentially, you should be able to do it via a form that you submit to the registrar. I'm not sure if the process has changed because things are online, but there should probably still be a form. But essentially, I believe that you can transfer up to 3 credits. And so I believe I transferred 2.5. And they'll apply towards, there's specific requirements for each AP credit. I'm not sure about IB credits, I'm sorry about that, but for AP credits, for different courses, there's different things that it'll translate to. So for some of them, they'll apply for program requirements. For some of them, they'll apply for different courses or different prerequisites. And for some of them, they won't apply for either. And so I kind of transferred my credits based on what each of the credits that I had would translate into. But I would definitely recommend going through the link that is in the chat and seeing what fits best for your situation. And again, Registrar's Office is a great resource for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Great information. Registrar is always the place to go for stuff like this. So another question we have is there a way for students who are fully online and not in the GTA, Greater Toronto Area, to opt out of some of the incidental fees that have to do with the facility? I only know that you can opt out of health and dental plans. If anyone has any knowledge about opting for fees. If not, oh, Natasha?
I don't have any information. I would say you'd have to get in contact with some other facility at U of T rather than asking us. Yeah, you would have to contact someone else for the specifics on that.
All right.
The short answer is no, there's not really a way to opt out of the incidental fees for the facilities. There is ways to opt out of the health and dental plans though.
Yes, okay, thank you for that. So we have another question. What are the different positions first years can hold in NCSC? Is there an application to be made or an email to be written? Lucy, I know you spoke to this a little bit, but maybe just one more time for the people.
One more time for the people in the back. Yeah, so basically, it depends on the position that you want to get involved with. I would say the most immediate positions are the ones that are going to go up for elections in the fall. So fall elections are going to happen in September, which is super, super soon. But you'll probably start hearing information around mid-September. But for that, the way that you kind of go through it is there will be a nomination form. Which might look a little bit different this year, but we're still working out the details. But there will be a nomination form that you have to fill out with some information as well as perhaps garner some signatures. And then you'll turn in the nomination form and be kind of officially nominated for your position. And then depending on the position that you want to run for, and then you'll be submitting kind of information and as well as writing a speech for an eventual forum. And then at the forum, you'll kind of give the speech as well as answer questions from voters. And then there will be a voting period, and then there will be kind of the announcement part of the elections. And that's kind of for elected positions. And then for any commission, volunteer, lower commitment kind of positions, they'll kind of come out gradually throughout the year depending on the commission and the commissioners. And so I would definitely say stay tuned on our social media for details about that. But those will probably require kind of more of a short application or a short interview kind of process.
All right. So we're nearing the end. So one quick question. I want everyone to answer this one because I think it's a great question. One very quick piece of advice you wish you had before going into first year. I want all 4 of you to answer. And make it short and sweet, please.
I'll go ahead first. I would say don't be afraid to make mistakes. You'll always make mistakes, deal with them, and go with the flow.
I would say ask for help if you need it. U of T is a huge school, which means there's a lot of resources available for whatever problem you have. If you need help, help is there. And if you don't know where to go, come to one of your student leaders at your college.
I would say be prepared to learn things about yourself that you didn't know before, and be prepared to be challenged.
Yeah, I would say be open to anything and everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much to our panelists. And thank you to all of you for your lovely, awesome, many, many questions. It was awesome scrolling through them and asking them. Thank you so much for coming out. I know some of the questions, there were a lot of questions to get through. So thank you so much to everyone for coming out. I think there's like a thank you slide I should share. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. We hope you had a good time. Thank you for all your lovely, lovely questions. They were awesome. If you came late, please don't forget to sign in on the attendance sheet. Hopefully someone will link that for me. Thanks so much. We do have video games night tonight at 7 p.m. It's going to be a good time. Thank you so much for everyone for coming out. If you have any more questions, please feel free to email new.orientation@utoronto.ca for any questions. And we hope everyone, thank you so much, Todd, for the link. We hope everyone had a good time. Also, I just ask all panelists and transcribers to stay for one quick second.